Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for turning up, attending. It's an amazing turnout for our first ever tech event at Payaut, our first ever event, so thank you so much. Of course, we are speaking about the theme of building a FinTech, well, engineering a FinTech from the ground up, and we have a number of in-house and guest speakers in the lineup. So first of all, please put your hands together for our very own CTO, Simon Hall.
All right. It's good to see so many people here. I'm genuinely thrilled. Thanks all for coming. It's so good to see so many faces around. So the theme of today is how to build a FinTech from the ground up. And my talk will be on rebuilding FinTech from the ground up. So as you know, I'm Simon. I'm the CTO of Payaut. As a brief introduction, I'm originally from Sweden, and I've been the CTO of Payaut since June this year. So just about 3.5 months into the job, but it feels like I've been here for ages already. I was previously at a company called BCG Platinian. So BCG is a management consulting company, and BCG Platinian is the IT arm of BCG. So we used to work with very big companies, helping them solve big IT challenges, either strategical or operational. And now I'm at a very small company, and I love it. And I'm also in the middle of a home renovation, so that's lots of things happening. I work for a company called Payaut. That's where you are right now. So what is Payaut? What is it that we do? We do payment solutions for marketplaces. So if you think of a typical payment service provider or a PSP, they typically work with acquiring funds from a buyer, right? So if you have a shoe company, for example, you would use a PSP to get the money from your customers to yourself. But where Payaut helps out, if you have a marketplace, and you don't only want to get the funds from the buyer to yourself, but from the buyer to another seller that is onboarded on that marketplace. So that brings in some extra complexity, and that's exactly what Payaut helps with. So why is Payaut amazing? Payaut is good because we work with multiple payment service providers. So there's a lot of PSPs like Adyen or Stripe that have their own marketplace solutions, but they're always built for always using Adyen or Stripe or whatever that PSP is to acquire the funds. So that creates a lock-in. We don't have that. We work with any PSP, and then you can get the best from whoever PSP that you're integrating with. So the best of all worlds. We're also specializing in payment solutions for marketplaces, which means that marketplaces can have up-to-date administration, so they know exactly where their funds are, even if it comes from multiple sources. They know what's coming in, what's going out, what's in the middle, what's happening to it. And we help them also onboard their sellers to their platform. So as you know, if you sold something on a marketplace, you often need to go to something called KYC, or Know Your Customer, where you need to submit your passport, you need to go through all of these steps, and that's something that we help with. You need to do from a regulatory perspective, but that we do more streamlined. And with that, you get built-in compliance with PSD2, which is the main regulation that affects payments and marketplaces as well. So use Payout, be compliant, get a better product. I joined Payaut in June, as I said, and Payaut is about 2.5 years old. So I joined 2 years into the journey of Payaut, which means that there was already quite some work that had been done. There were an initial set of customers that had been onboarded, small customers. There was an initial product that was built, and it was kind of a company that was up and running. It's so small. And when I joined, Payaut was really at a crossroads. So we had done the initial push to build up the Payaut product, but there were some things that weren't working right with Payaut by the time that I joined. So the first MVP was ready, but the way that the first MVP, so minimum viable product, the prototype that we had, it was working, but it was not necessarily set up to scale. So it worked for the first couple of customers that we would have, but it wouldn't work for the next 10 or 100 customers that we had. And with that, in the pursuit of actually building up our first platform, we also had a lot of technical debts. I think all the Payaut engineers in this room can attest to that there's a lot of work that went into building this platform fast, but that then is now kind of slowing us down because we have implementations that were not maybe as high quality as we would have wanted them to, etc. And all of this had a really kind of bad impact on our velocity. So our features took really long to develop and deploy. We had a lot of ongoing projects that were going in parallel, but that never really finished, or that took a really long time to finish. And also with that, we lost a big part of our engineering team, which was a big challenge for Payaut. We had a lot of engineers that was part of the initial team at Payaut, but then we lost them, and we lost the knowledge and the capacity that they brought with us. So that was June. What did we do? Speaking to the theme of the night, we rebuilt Payaut from the ground up. It's maybe a little bit of an overstatement, but we really started things, kind of took a look at everything that we had and see how can we do things differently and hopefully better. So the first thing that we did is to change the way that we work. So before we worked a little bit in silos, the engineers at Payaut. We had you could see in the code who had developed that part of code. That was engineers X code and that were engineers Y code, and they looked very different, which also made it difficult for all the new engineers that came in. And it was also easy to get kind of isolated if you were an engineer at Payaut at that time. So we said no more of that. We now do all the work in a team. And we set up 2 teams to start with, our merchant experience team and our payment infrastructure team. And we also said that we will not do projects in parallel. We will do one project at a time, or one project per team at a time. And it's the role of the product manager to decide what that project is. And with that, we have our 2 teams, each team consisting of a product manager that sets the agenda of the team. We have an engineering manager who is overseeing the processes and the overall health of the team. A handful of engineers, so 5-ish engineers in each team. And then a designer, but there's no designer at Payaut yet, but in the future we will have one. And that's the product triad, for those of you who are into product, that come together and hopefully create great products together. The second thing that we did is rebuilding the team. So Payaut has been on a hiring spree. We were very, very short on engineers. So this is one of our engineers, Adli, who joined just a few days after I did. And we were making that our highest priority, to hire as many engineers, as many good engineers as we could to build up our team. But it was going to take too long. At that point, Payaut was down to so little engineering resources that we couldn't meet our goals that we had set. We wanted to get a big customer live, and with the engineers that we had, it was simply not going to happen. So we had Mobiquity, which is a digital agency here in Amsterdam that came to the rescue. We have a few Mobiquity engineers here as well. You will hear from Travis a little bit later in the night. But we got help from Mobiquity with a few engineers that could provide capacity, engineering power, kind of an immediate boost into our engineering operations within Payaut. And we also hired an in-house recruiter, Libby, who is here somewhere. Who is also now helping to drive this and helping us build up the team and drive our hiring agenda as well. From there, once we had at least the kind of first sets of engineers that were onboarded to Payaut, we really needed to do something else to our planning. So our 2 product managers that we have, so we have Martin and Robert, were tasked with setting the agenda for each team of what is it that they really need to do, and how can we break that down into bite-sized projects and pieces to work on. And what you see here is actually the roadmap that we developed a few weeks ago. So this is our initial version of it, and it's very simple. It's very low-tech. It's just stickies on a whiteboard or on a board, and it's the specific work that we do. In this case, this was our Google Cloud migration that we'll talk to you a bit later. And then from there, we started building. So we had the engineers, we had the plan, we had an overall objective to get our next big customer on board. And then from there, we started actually making progress for each of the teams. So the Pi team, the payment infrastructure team that we had, started rebuilding our infrastructure onto the public cloud or Google Cloud. And we had our merchant experience team that were building up our data, reporting, and API foundation. So I'll spend a little bit of time to talk through some of the work that they have done and some of the engineering aspects of doing this piece of work as well. When Payaut started, or when I joined, we already had some legacy. And it's an interesting starting point to be a company that is 2 years old and that already has legacy code. I don't know for the organizations that you come from if you have a similar problem, but this was the case for Payaut, especially on the infrastructure side. We had everything on an IaaS, so that's infrastructure as a service. So we really rented servers that we had from a private cloud provider, running our Java applications straight up. So just take the Java application, copy them over to the server, press run, or run it in Bash, or whatever it is. We also had manual deployments to our production systems. So, of course, if you have it set up like this, it's error prone, and you're also not really incentivized to actually deploy stuff to production. It becomes a big deal every time you do it because you don't know what's actually running there, you don't know if what you will deploy will actually work or not. So it happened infrequently. We also had our office IT in-house. So this is a particular pet peeve of mine. But we set up all of our email servers, file management, calendars, everything was running in-house on a solution called Nextcloud. And it was a pain in the neck to manage. It kept breaking down and it kept taking time from myself and Fernando, who is our infrastructure engineer, and it was not value adding. It was very frustrating for, I think, everyone that used the systems and for everyone that had to maintain the systems. And also, we had no capabilities to use. Right? So we had a private cloud provider. They provided us with the basics, the servers, storage, the networking, but really nothing beyond that. So every time we wanted to do something new, we had to research, get the solutions ourselves, deploy it to our infrastructure, and it just kept building up all of this technical debt that we had. So the first quick win that we had was moving to Google Workspace. So we took Nextcloud, and Payaut is in the fortunate position that we're quite small. At that point, I think we're 13 people, 14 people, so really few people to be using these systems. And we could just do this straight away. We went to google.com or googleworkspace.com, or whatever the URL is. We signed up with a credit card. We could manually migrate all the files. So the way it works, you just log into Google Workspace, you enter the SMTP server that you want to migrate this from. You can go around with the laptop and everyone types in their password, and that just copies over the emails. It was, again, very low tech, but it worked for the size of organization that Payaut was. And we managed to do this within 1 week. So from the point where we said, okay, well, we actually want to go ahead and do this, to the point where the switchover was complete, and we had the learning session for all of our 13 or 14 people at Payaut to see how we use these new tools. And I did this before at my old consulting life, and big companies would spend months planning for something like this. Of course, they're much bigger, their implications are much worse if they mess something up, but that's really the benefit that you have of being a small startup, that you can do this kind of stuff very, very quickly. Cost-wise, we pay a little bit more for our Google Workspace. Of course, we need to pay Google every month for the accounts that we have, but compared to spending our engineering efforts of maintaining and developing this stuff, we win big. We save so much time and capacity to spend on other resources. So I would highly recommend it. This is one of the best things that we did. And my life is so much easier. Every time we have a new person joining, we can just create a new account. It's just how it should be. We also migrated our infrastructure to Google Cloud. So we took our Office IT to Google Workspace, but we also used the wider Google Cloud platform to re-host all of the applications that we had. And we decided on a shiny Kubernetes foundation, so it's a Google Kubernetes engine. So the team spent quite some time in setting this up, and that was also one of the key reasons why we decided to go with Google. They have really strong Kubernetes capabilities, and they also have good learning material, and it's quite easy to use Google. So we had very little skills in cloud or any of the specific cloud providers already at Payaut, so this was a good reason for us to decide for Google specifically. We also decided to only change the infrastructure when we did this migration, so it was only changing one thing at once, so not do source code changes while we're doing infrastructure changes, but really focus on taking all the applications that we have, putting it on a new platform for us, which is the Google Kubernetes platform. And we also applied a few design principles that will really serve us as we go forward. So all of the infrastructure that we have is coded in Terraform, which means that if we need a new load balancer, if we need a new whatever, it's lines of code in Terraform, and then we spin it up for that environment. And the added benefit of this is that we can then take this particular piece of code and we can replicate it to whatever other environments that we have. So I think this is one of the super cool things that we do. Massive achievement from the Pi team that made this happen. And we also had this set up with the minimal amount of permissions that we needed. So we created one user that had no permissions. We ran the deployment scripts. We saw what kind of permissions were needed, added the next set of permissions, reran it until it didn't complain anymore. We had all the permissions that we needed. And we also took the design decision to embrace the platform services that were available. So, it's talking too long. Just a second. Yeah. So we decided to embrace the platform services when they're available instead of focusing on avoiding vendor lock-in. So make use of as much of the Google investment as possible. And with the results that are lost here, we can spin up new environments in minutes. So we did that actually last week. We set up a new environment with everything in it, integrated all of our CI/CD pipelines, and it took an hour or an hour and a bit to set everything up, have everything up and running where people could connect and start using it. I also want to speak a bit about the data and the API foundation that we're building. So that's driven by our other team, a merchant experience team. So armed with the new tools that we have from our new cloud vendors, we set out to modernize or rebuild a big part of the rest of our stack as well. So we had our dashboards already, so they were built in Vue.js, but we now rehosted them, so making use of Google's functionality, host them in buckets, load balancer, get all of that sorted for us. We set up a new API foundation, so previously we had a kind of a homegrown Spring Boot application that did this for us, but we can now make use of the proper API tooling that is available on Google. We implemented new security solutions to do the authentication and authorization across our platform. We started using cloud functions to build ourselves away from big Java applications and start breaking out code that didn't necessarily need it to be tightly integrated with the core of Payaut and build that separately instead. And we set up a new data platform on BigQuery and Dataflow to host all of our business data, load it from our transactional system so we could run new fancy analytical workloads. And then all of this connected with CI/CD, so GitLab for all of the projects that we have, continuously integrating this on the environments that we have. So a big part of this is also modernizing our data foundation. So previously we had built everything on transactional databases, so the same databases that hosts our kind of core services, so making sure that all the payments get done, making sure that all the users are in their systems, were also used for reporting purposes initially, which creates issues when you start scaling and building this big. So instead, we decided to separate this. We have still our transactional systems, but we build data pipelines to split this up to a separate database or a data lake, where we can run all of the new analytics and reporting use cases that we had on top of this. And with this, this all came together in our merchant dashboard. So this is the dashboard that our customers, the merchants or the marketplaces would use, where they could connect and actually generate reports and see what's happening with their data. So who are the sellers that are in their system? What are the kind of bills that they have racked up? So what's actually the payment flow for these sellers? And get the insights actually of what's happening, the visibility of what's happening on the platform. And what's cool with the merchant dashboard is that it really uses the whole tech stack, from the front end, from the hosting of those front ends, to the APIs, to the security solutions, to the cloud functions, to the data lake, to everything beyond that as well. So, and I think this represents kind of a new payout. I think a payout that is very different from when I started, and where we really focus on speed and making use of commoditized components that are available for us. So we spend time and we invest in our CI/CD to make sure that we don't do things manually, but really that we automate them and we do them right the first time, and then making us able to actually deploy and integrate code as we make it available for us. And since the infrastructure is also code-end, that gives us more certainty in moving our code between our environments, so moving it from our development environments that we can spin up to our first integrated environment, to our external sandbox, to our production environment eventually. And also with that, having our APIs follow the same flow. So we have our applications have endpoints, the endpoints generate the documentation that is loaded into our APIs, that is then later generating business documentation that we can then share with our merchants. So everything is connected and it's up to date. And the final thing is test automation. So how do we make sure that the things that we build are not only integrated, but that they also work? So that's what we're in the middle of at the moment. We're now doing a huge testing effort to test our system. And then the ambition is to start building end-to-end tests that we can run continuously and make sure that we don't break stuff when we build and deploy it. Great. So what did I learn from all of this? Just a few takeaways from this talk. First of all, working at a startup has been really great. I used to work for really big companies, and now working at a very small startup is it's an amazing experience. I would really encourage you to try it out if you haven't already. But just seeing how much we're able to change things and the kind of impact not only I have, but I think everyone at Payaut has, is really great to see. And having an idea and actually being able to realize it. The second learning is we need to focus on what really matters. So Payaut is a company of around 20 people at the moment, and we don't have the engineering resources of our competitors. We're not Stripe, we're not Agile. We don't have the deep pockets or the team to actually make this happen in the same way that they can. But what that means is that we need to use what's available for us, if that's the kind of cloud capabilities that are there or the silly office IT, so that we can spend our time and energy of what will make Payaut successful and stick out. And a third learning, which I think I underestimated a bit, is new processes and technologies are hard to implement. I think this is, of course, always true. Everyone that reads this knows that this is true. But I think we felt it firsthand of introducing a lot of process, introducing a lot of new technologies. And I think we're finding our flow, but at least one big learning for myself is just keep it as simple as we can to make sure that it's clear, and then we can always add on more afterwards. And then fourthly, focusing on speed in engineering. Otherwise, we're doomed, especially for a company at the size of Payaut. We can't afford to get slowed down. So we need to continuously focus on automation, reducing waste, essentially following all of the DevOps principles for Payaut. And the fifth learning is product. I think it's easy, especially when you're a small company, to be dominated by either sales or engineering. Let's see. But we need to have product run through everything. So our product managers have a really big job for them in identifying the problems that we need to solve, what are the most high priority things that we should work on and why, and sharing that understanding with the team. So yeah, a short presentation. I'll give room for just a few questions. Great. We won't do a long Q&A, but if there are any questions.
Thanks for the presentation, it's really great. I think you might have answered some of the questions that I'm going to ask right now, just at the end of those points. But first of all, why did you choose Google Platform over some of the other cloud providers? The choice for Vue, for example, over React. And also, I'm interested in the implementation of GitLab. If you actually use kind of custom in-house runners on Docker containers, opposed to what you get out of the box in the cloud.
Yeah, okay, good question. So Google Cloud, so we had quite a long debate about this. We wanted to go with one of the big providers. So either if that's Google Cloud or AWS or Azure. And I think all of these three providers would have served as well. We ruled out Azure because it's still, at least when I worked with Azure, it was still a bit Microsoft oriented. So I know I did a big Azure project in the past, and some of the like logging and monitoring functionality was not available on Linux servers. Okay. So it would have worked, but we decided not. And then that left the choice between AWS and GCP. I always found AWS to be a little bit more complex. It's a bit more difficult to get started with. And I think especially where Payaut was at that time, we needed something that was simple and kind of to the point. And that was the main reason for that. Then the second question was around why we choose Vue. That decision was already made when I joined. So we already had some parts that were implemented in Vue. I think, again, we could have gone with Angular or React, we would have been fine, but Vue is it's a fine framework. It does what we needed to do. And on GitLab, we actually were running on Jenkins when we started. So it was also hosted in our web of IaaS servers that we had. We tossed it out, it wasn't working, and we went with GitLab instead. And we have our own runners. So we run our runners on our Kubernetes cluster. Which is cool, it works really well. I can't speak highly enough of GitLab.
Cool. Thank you.
Great. Other questions?
So did you get a big customer live?
We're still working on it. So we have a big milestone next week or the week after next week. And it looks like we will hit it, which is good. It's a massive effort by the team, which is really cool. Great. I'll leave with this. I can't. When I joined, we were very short of engineering resources, and we still are. We need to build out our team. So come join the party. We have Libby, who is our recruiter. So let me know, let Libby know, let anyone know. But we're looking for great people. So great. Thank you.
Moving into our second speaker of the evening, I am very pleased to introduce to you Camiel, CEO of Buddy Payment.
So, guys, thank you for having me. A lot of people here. How to build a fintech from the ground up, and I know Maarten, who is working here, and he knows that I build a fintech from the ground up. So you guys asked me to tell something, and I'm honored. So thank you very much. My name is Camiel Kuiper. I built Buddy Payment, a Rotterdam-based fintech company. We built a banking product and several other products, but a banking product for debt prevention. I really like to share what we built, and later on how we built it, like from a more like a business perspective, and later on get into the technical choices we made, the bad ones, and also some good ones. And after I'm also really interested in questions or opinions. So I'll go through. We have, at the moment, we have 3 products. We work in the social domain. All our products are based on PSD2, Simon just mentioned. So we have 2 payment licenses from the Dutch General Bank. And we use both insights and the ability to make payments to help either vulnerable citizens that are in debt or having a really bad financial situation, or debt professionals with helping them with insights or making choices. So, and I'm going to zoom in on the Buddy app. It's also called Buddy Banking, and we're going to zoom in on that one. The other one is Budget Scan. It's like make a scan of a financial situation, helping a professional to be able to help somebody really quickly, like by understanding what, where there is a problem, if there is a problem. And the last one is a platform for making automated payment arrangements. We do that for a lot of creditors, also for the tax authority. And we use the insights of the banking history to make like a personalized payment arrangement for, if there are multiple creditors, we make one arrangement for multiple creditors. And so, to the Buddy app now. Oh yeah, so the slogan is empower the people. I first want to show you guys like what we built, and as I said, it's a banking platform, and it goes, I think, automatically, but I'm not sure. Maybe you have to click. So we also have facial recognition now, but just as anybody understands, it's just a 5-figure login, and municipalities, but also care organizations, and also a few big creditors like KPN, for example, are giving the application to clients or citizens that are that don't pay the bills or that are coming out of or coming into a debt salvation program, which is costing a lot of money, and so they are very happy that we now build a product. What we do is we look into the history of all the banking transactions, and we look at income and at your fixed expenses. Like we look at patterns and at we categorize them, and we say, okay, the difference between the two is the budget we give you. And so we give you a budget. In this case, it was 300 euros for the whole month, and like it's working. So if you're going to drink a cup of coffee, and now I need to click. Then you directly see, okay, this is going out of my budget, but if your rent is paid, then you don't see it in this overview because all your fixed expenses are on a different account, so you can't overspend. We give you like push notifications when you're going very hard on your budget, and we give you like all these insights, and I think I need a few clicks now. And a few more. Yeah, so if you swipe to the right, you see everything reserved, like on the other account, for your fixed expenses. So you really have a clue, like, okay, Buddy is giving me a budget, but didn't forget my mortgage or my rent or my insurance. And if you swipe one more to the right, we give you like your monthly overview, like how is my financial situation built up. What are my fixed expenses, what is the budget I already spent, and what do I still have left, and what are like percentages and stuff. If I can get 2 more clicks. And you can also see like within fixed expenses or the other things like how did I spend. And the main thing we want is financial stability, but that's something that like the municipality wants financial stability. What our users want something totally different. They want to reach their financial goals, and they understand that if they want to reach their financial goals, they have to like change some behavior. And it really helps that you can't overspend, so your fixed expenses are always paid. But the most important thing is that you are motivated to live from a smaller budget. And basically, for all the people we help, they already have a very small budget. So motivate them to live from an even smaller budget is a real hard thing to do. And this kind of overview helps people to understand, okay, where's my money going right now, and how can I set something apart every month. So that are triggers that we also communicate through push notifications and such. We go over to savings. So we swipe back a few times. One other thing we get back a lot is we budget for a whole month, and because that's like a really simple thing to do, we say, okay, 2,000, 1,400 fixed expenses, your budget is 600, and everybody understands. But what happens within the month is quite hard to understand, because your bank balance is like at this moment at a certain point, and your income is coming like at the 24th or the 26th. And the difference between those two methods is really hard to explain to our target group. So we made a screen to like tell people how is your bank balance built up. If we go through, we made the chat functionality. I left it out because I think anybody can imagine how it looks. We got the insights of the account, so the budget and fixed expenses. And one of the super important things is saving. So we have some of the automated savings, like we give a trigger and we ask a user, do you want to save this amount of money? And we're not asking it for this month, because we know that if a user got a budget left in their head, the budget is already spent. So the question is, do you want to save it starting from next month? And that more than 80% of our users saying yes to that question. And if we ask if you want to save it immediately, we only have 30% saying yes to the question. So that are super important insights for us. So this is, I think, what anybody understands. You can make like your goals, and we communicate about it with the chat functionality. So this is basically what we build a product. This is one of the goals. We build a product for helping people making financial choices, but we're also making some choices for them, like separating the fixed expenses. We're also doing an allowances check based on the income, and yeah, it's also for us, it's always fighting for speed and balancing quality and speed. So how we build it, if from a business perspective, I make it really simple. We just sell a product and we make a product, and I like to dive into the both in the same. And the next, please. For us, on the short term, it was okay. We don't care about the product; we just have to sell it. We need the money to really build a proper product, and at this point, we need to sell it to clients, and we need to sell it to investors. So that was the most important. So you're going to build prototypes that are not really working. They do on a short notice, but speed is the most important thing. And our developers were not happy with with that focus, but when I talk to them, they kinda understand. Now we're working more on the long term, and that means that we really can balance, and we can work on system innovation, and we can work on also some of the technical debt that we have. So it's more we're running into the long term right now, and that gives also some peace of mind. So how did it start? One more thing, it's hard for me to understand where I'm at. Yes, I think for a startup, like for our startup, it was always a fight between these things. Like we have the expectations of shareholders or the clients, and we sold expectations, and they were very far away from reality sometimes. But they gave us capital to manage all the challenges we had to cope with the expectations, and that's around that you are doing quite some times before you have a stable FinTech that you can really build further. Yeah, the start. I had a company before. It was Easy Collect Services. Had it with 2 companions. We had some people. It was also technical. We built payment platforms for charities. So we had like kind of a false start because we had some money and we had some developers already in-house that we could say, okay, you work for this company, but now can we please go to this other thing that we find much more interesting. But at the same time, I think when you have this false start, you are going to aim higher and therefore meet the same problems that you will always meet if you start something. Second was, yes, validate your assumptions. You have this problem thingy that you think is there and you have like an idea of a technical solution for this problem thingy, but you don't know how big it is and if your technical solution is going to fit it. And for us, this was like the problem of debt. And I thought, okay, in the Netherlands we were quite a rich country, so how big is the problem? But we find out like that 1 in 5 people are living in debt, and almost 40% of all households are coping with like financial stress. So it was much bigger than I thought. And who were spending on this problem? Municipalities on one hand and creditors on the other hand. And they spent like 17 billion euros a year on this enormous group of people getting in debt, and the debts increasing every month by new creditors that are chasing these people and giving them fines by not paying. So we thought, okay, the problem is there. And the technical solution was based on PSD2, because we knew if we could get into these payment history, we can understand what people earn, and we can understand what their fixed expenses are. And with the second PSD2 license, with payment initiation, we can put the fixed expenses on a different account so they can overspend. That was basically the concept that was born, and we needed to validate it and make a business case. And one of the things we did to validate was to go to some consultants of the big agencies. Of, okay, we think this PSD2 thing and this that thing, and can we make it? And the first thing they said was, we want to be your first investors. So that was a good sign. We thought, okay. So they became our first investors, and we started to design a concept, like, okay, how do we make this work, and how does it need to look? Don't really have to work, but like we have to sell it to clients first. So we need them to get interested, and we did. How should it work? So with these consultants, we find out, okay, we need this PSD2 integration to understand, to get all these transaction data. I just told Simon we can get 7 years back, so you really can profile somebody and really understand like what do you like and what don't you like. But fixed expenses and income is also for some situations very hard to understand. And we use the history like to predict the future, what's next month going to look like. And we separate it. In the third step, we give insights and coaching. I'd like the basic banking insights you just saw, but also coaching on push notifications. And we built some nice ones for the age between 18 and 30 right now. So also like kind of a sarcastic way of coaching, and we find out that people really like that. And it's also a good thing for the marketing of things. The fourth step is the connection we made, for example, to the tax authority to also understand allowances, but also other forms of tax. I wanted to say aangifte inkomstenbelasting, and I don't know the proper word. So it became a whole infrastructure. And how should it work, but also how should it look like? So second big step for us was just get clients, because we can't build on top of this like big promise and big dream. We now need to have some of the municipalities that are saying, okay, I also believe this. And we reached out to the 30 biggest municipalities, At this point, we worked for over 115, so we did quite well in the meantime. But at that time, it was very hard to only get in. We got, within the first 3 months, we got 10 municipalities that were saying, okay, PSD2, I don't know, but it sounds like things are going to happen and we need to, because we're spending hundreds of millions on this problem, so okay. If you need a fee of 25,000 euros, okay, here it is, and just go for it. So we asked them pilot fees and we got some money. It was by far not enough, but we knew if they're going to pay, they're also going to invest time and be with us in this adventure and help us to make this a success. And then extra capital was needed, of course. So we started hiring people, we started building and prototyping, also to get these clients on board. But extra capital was needed, so we got some extra investors. We had some money of selling the previous company, and we needed those banking licenses that were like quite expensive. Also on the part of compliance, needed a compliance officer and a compliance employee, and you needed to get audits of really high-end audit companies from the Zuidas over here, and it was not nice for being a startup and needed to match all these high requirements from the Dutch General Bank. And then prototyping, the nice thing, and we needed to choose systems, and I'm going into what the things we chose. It was really hard for us, flexibility versus the security thing. We got like the Nederlandse Bank, de Autoriteit Financiële Markten, de Autoriteit Consumentenmarkt en de Autoriteit Persoonsgegevens. So we had 4 organizations diving into us because we were the first startup that were going for the PSD2 licenses. So it was new for everybody. Everybody was like, okay, we're going to ask you a lot of questions. So we needed to choose wisely, and at that point, my companion Marco worked at Coolblue for a long time, and he was in development teams over there and in the data teams, and he knew like people, of course, and he was saying, okay, he's the best, and we should hire her, and we got in people that we were very happy with, but they were familiar with a very big organization. And they thought, okay, we're like going to build a bank or something. So they set up everything properly, and maybe too properly. Like they told me, okay, but we need to build proper tech, right? I said, yeah. Yeah. And you don't want to have like all these problems later on, right? No. No. I don't want to. Okay, we're going to build something for you. So they made all these choices. Also, I heard CI/CD pipelines were working with Terraform. They chose ASP.NET Core and Xamarin because I think .NET Core because they worked on Coolblue and everybody was from Coolblue. So we only could choose this, and then Xamarin was very close by, and then you needed to choose Azure, right? So the choices were like made that way, and I was like, I'm not going to make these choices. But did you compare really well? Yeah, we did. Okay. So our choices were made, and on Xamarin we're like kind of in doubt because we maybe want to choose React Native. We did for our chat functionality because they want to test if that was so much better. But the end of the result was no, it's not so much better than so. We're basically still going in this direction. And but like we also discussed, if you choose once, you can't really go back. So it's hard. For the next slide. Yeah, so we got clients, we got a prototype, and then we needed to go live. and like investors were, you need to go to the market. Our clients were, the story was so nice, but why is it taking so long? So that's a thingy. And we made a lot of noise. We told like all the newspapers, the social domain is changing. We had some very happy users. We had a few. And they were also talking to all the journalists, and we came on the journal and in the newspapers and on the radio, and it was crazy. So a lot of people and also a lot of organizations dived into the company, and it was on one hand very nice, on the other hand we lost focus, because they were like, oh, if you can do this, you can make payment arrangements. And the best thing to say at that point was, we focus fully on body, but as you saw, we made a platform for payment arrangements, because at that point we thought, okay, we're going to make a very big company that can do everything government with PSD2, and we can do it all. And that was not the best choice, because it took a lot of resources, and it cost us a lot of time. So talk to users was something we didn't do for a long time, because at that time we won a tender for more than 90 municipalities. So we thought, if everybody believes that our concept and our prototype is working, it is working. And we don't need to really validate it with users, because like, why are they all buying our product if it is not working? And it was not. So we totally changed that. So one of the things is validate everything, talk to them, and now every developer at Buddy has a own buddy, and that's somebody that uses the app and that is really having a story, because everybody that is using our product has a very special story, and also one that's hard to hear sometimes, because our developers, and I think that is for every developer, is making a good living, and also a lot of people are not, and that did something to also the motivation in the team. Then building the organization. We were live, everything was going wrong, and we needed resources. And so we started like in this hiring run, and at the same time we needed to be compliant, and at the same time we needed to have a structure, and at the same time the product was not working well. So that was hard, and the hardest thing was to balance speed and quality in the tech development, because we were like way too much focusing on quality. And I didn't understand why we didn't make any of the longer plannings we made. And I also didn't understand all the things that were on the backlog. There were all like things that I didn't understand, and I was like, if I don't understand it, what are the users what's the benefit for the user? And nobody could really tell, but we were making a very, very good platform. But I once said, okay, maybe we have the best quality platform, but we're not there anymore, because we didn't run the business right. So that was very hard to get all these very smart developers out of these very big organizations that wanted to build a proper bank, and I wanted to build a product thingy. So we built the organization, and we structured it with some help of an advisory board. My father is also in there. And some dev teams were some bigger now, but this is quite how we built the organization, with a designer for the products, and yeah. And then we had to transform the prototype that we sold into a product that works, and that's talking to users all the time. So now we do, and we really make steps. So that was our journey, basically. Yeah, and then some technical things, because Maarten asked me, they're all engineers here, and they only want to know the business perspective of how to build a FinTech from the ground up. So we use Microsoft Azure. Like I said, I didn't I didn't make the choice. But I know what we use, and we use like all the services that Azure provides, and that's very handy. So I think the only thing what's not in here is that we work with for our dashboarding. I don't know anymore. Okay. App service, application insight, key vault, app configuration, Cosmos DB, SQL Server. Fine. I think I'm there. Architectural principles, also not taught by me, but I got some help from our tech lead today. He said this really should be in. He said everything from microservices. I think we'll manage here. Automate as much as possible needed to be in there. And also, I know we have automated testing for everything, but sometimes if we change something, then all the automated tests don't work anymore. So I'm not sure how handy that is. And keep things as small as possible. And that's like everybody always says, yeah, okay, that's a good thing to do. But I know that we always thought we did, but I know for sure if I reflect at this point that we did not. For example, we thought we only could validate our concept if we had PSD2 licenses, which was such an enormous step. And now I know that we could validate our concept totally without those licenses and totally without an app. And just by going to users and making like a PowerPoint screen or doing something in Excel and just validate what we want to build. And we didn't. We thought, no, we need licenses and apps and big things and everything, and then we can see if this is correct. And so I know that this is true, but there are some layers in as small as possible.
It's an inspirational slide.
Yeah. And of course, working Scrum, we do two-week sprints. Yeah, also a designer in the team. You guys work with the product manager. We work with a product owner, and I just had a conversation with Martha about what the difference. But the product owner is also the one that is constantly talking to users and filling up the backlog. The only principle, I didn't know what it was, so I asked Thijs, and he said the only principle is that you do it from the start to the end, and also the testing part, because we had a lot of questions like, oh, we need testers, and I was asking, is testers are going to make us faster? Everybody was like, I don't know. So I said, okay, please help me with a business case for a tester, and nobody came back. So only principle. Yeah, we had a thing before that they were like building this very big, and I was like, okay, but now we're talking to users, and as you know, the users were not asking us for all these very quality things, and they were asking for like, can I save a bit? And so we need to make different things, and we need to make it faster. And that was very scary for some of the people within the teams, because they thought, okay, but maybe I'm going to make a mistake, and then other people get a wrong budget, and then they're getting in debt, and then they commit suicide, and it was it was going worse. So we had like this new thing in the company, and we said, okay, we need to fail fast, and failing fast is a very good thing. And so that needed to really change something. We got like this thing that Facebook had in the totally beginning, said like move fast, break things, or something like it. And so yeah, we did, of course, but it really helped. It really helped getting us faster and deploying faster and really getting things done in a sprint and not really small steps. Yeah, we work. We had a totally different process, but we had a change in PO, and we said, okay, we have our users, which are not our clients, because the municipalities are our clients, and they also want things, and we have our research besides the research we do with users. We also have a behavioral scientist that is did a promotion on this subject, and so we get these 3 pipelines that are making our roadmap basically, and the epics we describe like a vision on it with the design. And before we go to our team lead, one of the teams, we validate the designs with our test groups and user groups. So before we are going to the team lead, we already did quite something, and then we refined it with the whole team or with a feature owner. And before we had 1,000 conversations within the team. We refined everything within the team, and everybody wanted to be the smartest and say, like, we can do it this way and we can also do it that way, and we're only talking to each other. But the feature owner now has an idea, how do I want to implement this epic, and also can make the calls. So everybody can give him tips or her tips, but he or she says, okay, this is the way I'm going to do it, and that helps. That makes a really big difference. So then we do it in pre-refinement with this feature owner, make stories, it goes into refinement and straight into planning. I asked, like, are we always working on system innovation? And they were like, no, and we made this thing, and it was already a thing, but one of our developers said, okay, I wanted to label what we do in the Jira, so I understand, like, are we working 50% of the time on new functionality or all the time on technical debt? Because I sometimes think that some developers like most working on technical debt. So we made a very loose agreement with each other that functionality needed to be like 50% of the time, and system innovation, technical debt bugs, the other 50%. And now we see, because we did that for a long time, that we work 70% on functionality, because there are not that much bugs anymore and not that much technical debt anymore. So that really helps. I think I'm talking for quite a long time now, so I'm running up.
Shall I tap you out, Camiel?
I'm running up. I think this was it for me.
Thank you so much. I mean, it sounds like you're making such an impactful app, and yeah, it sounds great. So thank you. Do you want to do any questions?
Yeah, we can do, of course.
Yeah, 1 or 2, and then we'll have a break.
So you have actually your own IBANs for your customers, for your users, where you store the money for their fixed expenses.
Yeah, but we use like IBAN. We make new IBAN at ING, for example.
So
we make an extra IBAN in the bank they're already at.
Yeah, okay.
So we need to do KYC quite heavy, but not that heavy.
What's your big next, the next big step that you have, the big next milestone that you're gonna have for the future of the company?
From a technical perspective, it's the allowances check that we're working on for a very long time. So we have 4 big national allowances that are causing quite some problems, you might know. And we have over 1,600 local allowances in all of the Netherlands. So it's super difficult to understand when your income is increasing, your right to allowances is decreasing, and a lot of people don't know even what allowances are over there. And with some partnerships, we made, we totally automated that, and that's coming in the app the upcoming 3 months. And I think that's also for us a very big media boom again, because it's in the media a lot, this problem right now. So that's a thing that we're really focused on.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm very pleased to introduce to you our 3rd speaker of the evening, Willem de Vries from Silverflow.
Whoa! Well,
thank you for the warm welcome. I'm Willem. I'm 40. I live in Amsterdam with my girlfriend. I have 3 daughters, 1, 3, and 6. So if any questions about frozen ponytails or unicorns, the toy ones, please address them at the end of the presentation. My background originally is in physics. That's good and bad. The good thing is that you learn a lot. The bad thing is that you think you know it all. But sometimes that can be helpful. I then moved to Bain, so the competing firm where Simon worked. Spent about 5 years there and before moving into private equity. And then basically after 10 years in business, I got bored and wanted to do more nerdy stuff, so I joined Adyen. At Adyen I was in the acquiring processing team. I'll explain in a bit what acquiring processing is. But we did a lot of nice analytics, calculating fees, prices, optimizing authorization rates, and sort of really making the Ubers, the Facebooks, but also the Jumbo happy clients from Adyen. And we'll explain a bit how what we try to do to not copy that, but a bit like Payaut has basically taken one part of Adyen's product, more or less, says we're going to make this a single standalone product for a different group of customers and do this very, very well. We're basically doing the same thing, but for a different part of the Adyen stack. Say, let's take this out and do this in a different way. How do you start build a fintech from the ground up? We started with the team. So to the left is myself, Robert Kraal and Paul Buying are my 2 co-founders. Basically Robert and I, after leaving Adyen, we were contemplating what should we do next. Should we do something in open banking? Do we want to go back in acquiring? And as you can see, like with Robert's background, we know quite a bit on acquiring, and we have quite deep knowledge of that space. And it's actually quite handy if you want to start a company that you have deep business or user knowledge of the space. If you do something completely new like the body, you have to find it out as you go. But if you try to disrupt more of an existing space, it helps if you have deep knowledge. Robert and I decided we want to build not a bank, but we want to stay out of all the compliance, stay out of the PST, don't visit the Nederlandse Bank, and only focus on technology. But then we also realized, we are not the guys anymore writing code. We need someone. We need also a CTO as co-founder. Otherwise, we cannot seriously say we are a technology company. So we found Paul Buying, who had sold his previous startup a couple of years ago, was helping companies to move to AWS, and we said, okay, that's a perfect person for us to start this project. And I'll explain it also in a bit. He really was looking for something cool and fun to do next. And also our Nigel, our commercial officer in the UK, knows a lot about payments, very, very deep payment knowledge, but also very eager to sort of do a cool project before he retires. He still has 10 years to go. And tomorrow, actually, Joris Mudde is also a former Adyen colleague of ours who realized after selling his options, early retirement is a bit boring. So he ringed us. What are you guys doing, and can I help out? See, I now have the same problem as we had before. So what do we do? What is acquiring processing? That's something you typically don't know. And one of the beauty things about payments, it's very simple. You tap your card on the terminal, or you type your card number in an online screen. That's slightly more difficult. I hate Ideal. It's a terrible product. Don't use it. You start with a merchant. You're buying something there, and typically you have Molly or Stripe, and those are just PayFacs or gateways. They're nice companies, very big, very successful, but they're basically an onboarding machine. So they're very good in onboarding a lot of small merchants, doing KYC, and from there they've expanded. But what you need as well for a card payment is an acquiring bank, and this is basically something like McDonald's. McDonald's is the brand. The McDonald's Corporation from the US will give you, as a franchisee in the Netherlands or in the UK or wherever in the world, the permission to use the McDonald's brand, the McDonald's receipts and the McDonald's systems to build your own little business, and you have to take care of the land, the building, you need to hire people to flip the burgers for you. But a lot of the rules, the regulations, and how to do it is taken care by McDonald's. MasterCard and Visa work in a bit of a similar way, and the other card brands as well, but they're a lot smaller. But you have sort of this system on two sides. If you have a credit card from MasterCard or Visa, Amex is a bit different system. MasterCard or Visa won't give it to you, it will be given to you by Rabobank or ICS or ING in the Netherlands. And they actually do three things. They will KYC you, so are you not laundering money? Where does your money come from? Is it a legit income that you have? Are you a real person, etc., etc. They will underwrite the risk. So if you don't pay your credit card bill at the end of the month, it's not Visa or Mastercard problem, it's the Rabobank's problem, and they will, if maybe hire Buddy to help you to pay the bill at the end. And what they need to do is they need to have an IT system which takes care of the balance of the to check if you have enough money on your account, if you're allowed to repayment, etc., etc. Typically, that's not done by the bank itself. You have systems like TSYS, which is a big US company, and nowadays Marqeta, which actually just IPO'd for $18 billion is a neo version, 10 years old of this. On the acquiring side, you have the same. So if you as a store want to accept card payments, you have to go to an acquiring bank, and again, this bank has a license from Visa or Mastercard, a franchise, so to say, has the same sort of three roles. It's KYCs or KYBs, know your business, the merchant, we call them payments, merchants, and cardholders. Cardholders, because if you just call it a customer, a consumer, everybody gets confused. Those KYB, typically this is, again, where is the money coming from, who are the owners of the business, are they legit, are you not laundering money? Typical use case, open a casino in Malta, send your friends with your cash to your casino. Doesn't matter if they lose, it's still your money, but now it's legit. If they win, they can keep it for their effort. That's something typically Mastercard and Visa doesn't like, so they want you to check it. Everybody who works with payment will see if I suddenly selling 100 shoes size 48, either the local basketball team is in town, but likely someone else is being sold, like certain chemical substances, which here in the Netherlands we're very good at producing. They underwrite the transaction as well. This underwriting risk is slightly more complex than, let's see if I do this, than at the cardholder part. And that's why ideal is not nice. Mastercard and Visa give you an insurance when you buy something with the card. It's called a chargeback system. So if you don't get your pants from Zalando, if your rental car company charges you twice, you can call your bank, file a chargeback, you'll get your money back, and the merchant and the acquirer need to prove that you actually owe them the money and sort of fight it back. And this is a nice insurance for you to guarantee, sort of, especially with international payments, that you have a fair business system. And in my view, this is a bit of an underrated, especially in the Netherlands, part of what Mastercard and Visa do. They really build trust in this payment system, partly also through this charging system. Now imagine you have a Thomas Cook, which actually managed to go bankrupt as a travel agency even before COVID. You bought an airline ticket, Thomas Cook goes bankrupt, you cannot fly. You call your bank, you get a chargeback in. Visa, Mastercard, they are relatively, some people say too powerful. They say that's not my problem, dear acquirer, it's your problem. The acquirer cannot go to Thomas Cook, which is the merchant in the situation, because bankrupt. Problem ends up, the financial risk ends up at the acquirer. So this is not a same size of risk as you have as you lending mortgages or other corporate lending, but it is a sizable risk, and the acquirer needs to take care of that. Now, this whole story, and I still haven't told you what we do. As the issuer, the acquirer also needs to send, so we now done the KYC, we know that they're actually selling legit goods, we have estimated the risk. Okay, we can start paying, but we need to send in this data to Mastercard and Visa. That's called the acquiring processing part, the actual processing of the data. The sort of one of the biggest or most famous companies is First Data, OmniPay, TSYS does it as well. On the other side, you have SIA, you have never heard of it. This is very sort of dark and hidden. I might as well sort of talk from behind the curtain, then you sort of get where our position is in the value chain. Now it's actually nicer if I take the next slide. Yes. So what you see here, and being a Bain consultant, I love making charts and graphs and slides, and Simon would probably recognize it being a former BCG. Globally, there are about 342 billion card transactions each year. Vries, WorldPay has about the biggest, JP Morgan is the second, Sberbank is actually Russian, the third, etc. etc. Adyen is actually from this perspective not that big. Why is that? A lot of this is point of sale. So think Walmart, think Carrefour, think a lot of these big supermarkets, there's a lot of volumes. And in general, a lot of cash payments from your, if there are any Germans here, they love cash payments. It's moving to PIN or to card payments in stores as well, and of course in-store is moving to e-commerce. So we're sort of lifting on two mega trends in general. So this whole sort of POS world, point of sale or card presence, basically this means in-store payments. I put, after some digging, we found out sort of what is the type of systems we use. WorldPay actually bought the Bibit system, so you might remember from the first slide that Nigel and Robert already worked there. There was an early day, late 90s, early zeros, e-commerce payment provider, was bought by RBS and they created WorldPay. WorldPay also uses Systematics, was actually built in 1968. So that's actually before Neil Armstrong landed on the moon. So that's how old the system already is. This is still running. If you don't believe me, I have another slide I'll show you. JP Morgan Chase is the biggest, one of the biggest processors in the world. This is all the payments for AWS, for Amazon. They use Stratus for e-commerce, don't know why. Tandem for mortar, 1980, 1982. OpenWay from the Russians, well, it of course couldn't be in the 80s because you only wouldn't really have payments, but 1995, well, and so on and so on. More European, 1973. All of these still used. You can imagine CPUs were expensive, RAM was expensive, hard disk space was expensive, bandwidth was virtually non-existing. So you have to make your COBOL super efficient, buy a very expensive IBM mainframe, put it in the basement, lock up your engineers next to it, and making sure that it works. No one has left these engineers out because you cannot find any new. I doubt that anyone has learned COBOL. I had to write in the physics department something in Fortran. But these guys have a problem. It's very hard if you want to build something new. Systems stacked onto systems, so very hard to change this. It's hard to use, lengthy integration process. You can really think about 18 months, 2 years, maybe up to $1 million to send your messages to these systems, and an engineer, the COBOL ones, will check to see if this works. And there's not a lot of data. Everything is about data, of course, nowadays. Again, I'm pointing at you, Camiel. You check all the data. This is what fraud systems want to do. This is what Apple wants to do, what Walmart wants to do, what the flight companies want to do. They want to check the data, use it for risk, use it for customer loyalty, use it just to automate the reconciliation. If you have a lot of payments, it's nice if you don't have to manually do this. And these things are getting quite hard on these systems. So we actually say, look, this has been out there for a long time. This was also when we worked at Adyen, by the way. This was exactly the same situation. And Adyen basically said, let's build this in-house. A lot of engineers here, everybody always loves, let's build it in-house. Same at Adyen, let's build it ourselves. Simon already demonstrated that's not always the best idea, but it's the most fun, right? So Adyen did that, and this is, in our view, one of the key factors of Adyen's success, having a unified card processing platform which they use in Europe, use in America, use in LATAM, use in Australia. They use it everywhere. They use the same for e-commerce and for in-store payments, which are actually quite unique. There's no one. These guys will sell it to you, but it's actually a different platform. So this means that you can actually not refund a transaction you bought online in store because you can just not find it and not put it back on the same card. You can of course give the money back, but that's not really the same type of experience. So basically what this means, yeah, you miss opportunities. So a very nice thing, I think the government should also do this for example, your BSN, your business burger service number, is tokenization. So you don't actually use the PAN, the card number, but you store a hash token of it, and you, if that gets stolen, if you're Netflix, you store it, you use it every month to bill your card. your subscription. If it gets stolen, you cannot use it somewhere else. Push to card payments. In the Netherlands, it's very easy to wire money to someone else, but if you do it to the US, you might as well send a check. They'll scan the check with an app, send the check to the bank, and they will then type in the check in the system. This goes actually quite well on the Visa MasterCard rails, but you need to change some things for it. Wallets, so uploading money on an account. A lot of old systems have a lot of low authorization rates, so basically means that your transaction fails, not because you have no balance, but because some error or technical difficulty or quite unknown. This was for Adyen, for us, always one of the key factors where we say, okay, we can up this from 70 to 80 or 85 to 90, depending a bit on the market and the competition, which is a massive boost for merchants. In e-commerce, this is directly revenue, and depending a bit on what you sell, you might drop directly to the bottom line. Multi-currency, you would not believe it, but if you're in the US, you have no idea that the world continues behind the borders, especially for Donald Trump. So why would you build a platform for multi-currency? And that's why it's great to have an ATM in Tulum, in Mexico. We should pay $20 to get $100 out of the ATM. But if you want to be international, and of course nowadays e-commerce companies grow and expand international much quicker. Think again Netflix, Uber, well I don't have to name them. It's much easier, much quicker to expand, and much more demand also for these services internationally. And yeah, it is nice to get your Netflix subscription billed in euros and not in dollars, because it will be different every month. I love this one. It takes 1 to 2 weeks, not to onboard the merchant using KYC, but to actually put this in the system, because probably someone in a low-cost country is typing it in manually, or I don't know how they do it, but it's not great. It's expensive, it's complex, so it's not great to use. So you might be convinced of this statement now. We believe this industry needs an upgrade. So I'm not sure if you read The Wired a lot. I don't do it anymore because I typically buy it on the plane. But IBM still makes a lot of mainframes. Why? Because if you remember my first slide, Global Payments, JP Morgan, Fiserv, they are still using it and hiring people. This was indeed August 2021, so if you do like COBOL, it's great jobs, very well paid. And I said systematics still being used by FIS Global, the number 4 acquiring bank in the world. So this is absolutely live, not kicking, but everybody's using this, and that just causes a lot of problems, slowdowns, limit innovation. So what have we built? We built a cloud-native acquiring processing platform. So you now know what acquiring processing platform is. I think Simon just explained us what cloud-native is. You start and you accept the vendor login, but you can use all the nice tools, which in our case we use AWS. I choose Paul, so I had to choose AWS. It was my decision. Everybody is AWS fanboy at Silverflow, so we actually got this grant from one of our investors that you can use either 100K in 1 year or 40K in 2 years. I think it took us 3 months to spend the 40K because everybody was playing around and doing all the nice features. We have it a bit more under control now. But yeah, of course so this is a whole different way of approaching. So it is very scalable. We want to use a lot of data. We make the data available to all our customers for all type of users. That's really their choice how to use it. We do it ourselves as well. Make it secure. It's much easier. So in card payments, obviously, if your card details get stolen, this is quite dangerous. You can use this to buy things or to buy cryptos, whatever you want. So you have to make it very secure. There is for the payment fans here, payment card industry data security standard, PCI DSS. I assume you have it as well as Payaut. It's a hell of a lot easier if you use AWS, probably Google the same, because you don't need to worry about the camera on the top of your data center, whether this, and the logs and etc., whether this is compliant. This is taking care of you. We have HSMs in the cloud. We have it's much easier to make a redundant connection. We designed to be flexible. MasterCard and Visa release things twice a year. For us, it's yeah, as much as we want. We have the CI/CD pipelines. It's short, automated. Yeah, and that makes it that we can always sort of keep the latest functionality in there. Now, I want to tell you a bit about how we approach building the team, because of course not only the people on the first side. What we learned a bit in hiring, and we're now hired 19 people, about 13 or 14 are engineers. We are building something new and something big, and a lot of people really get excited about that, but not everybody. So typically, if you're, and it depends on the person, of course, but someone from Uber or Booking might not be so suited to think of how do I build something from scratch. But we really look for this. Do you get excited about this? And of course, you might work for Booking or Uber and get excited about this. And do you really like to build big new stuff? Tech is absolutely our core. I don't think we have only guy who is not an engineering background is Joris Budde, and I always call him the only registered accountant in the Netherlands which has an Ubuntu laptop. So everyone in the team really sort of enjoys software engineering. We have a lot of fun doing this, and it's really, yeah, we're really sort of payment nerds, and we also sell that we are. You have to operate what you have built, so we're not very keen on getting someone in at a temporary contract or consultants, sorry. You build it, you have to run it later, so if you mess up, it's your problem, and we really try to get people who at least commit for multiple years. Of course, always something can happen that this changes, but that's our goal. We want to have fun at work. We want to have a good time with each other, have a laugh, have fun. We have a big fridge, trying to get a bar in the next office. We spend a lot of time on the whiteboard, designing, thinking, and we don't have architects and then someone else implement it. Whether you're the CTO or the new joiner from school, you're involved in designing, thinking what you want to build first, and then actually implementing the code. And this is what our CTO actually does as well. And yeah, sort of the last thing which I found really cool. I really enjoy being an entrepreneur. It's a lot of fun to building your own stuff, doing your own thing, and also sort of the skin in the game part is also very nice. So we really encourage that our employees either buy stocks, or we also have an option, an ESOP employee stock option program, and by now they own the employees own more than 10% of the company. And we also have some big investors on board, so that's actually quite a bit. And yeah, to us, this is really key, of course, to building a great company. It's all about the team. We believe that although what you said, Simon, you're a small company, you cannot compete with Stripe or with Checkout maybe. We think actually leveraging new technology, but also getting a very good team. I think we quite easily can compete with the big banks, both on the tech part, but also on the team part, on just having better people, smarter people, more motivated people, knowing how to run and to do this. And yeah, let's see if we can get our old friends of Agen a bit sweaty as well, but that might be 1 or 2 more years down the road. We actually did, it's a bit of, basically we did some tests with Agen just for fun. We shoot some transactions to their issuing platform. They found some bugs in our platform, but we found more in theirs. That's it for me for tonight. Yeah, we're also hiring, but I don't want to take too much of your. I think Payaut is also a great company. No, but definitely come have a chat if you're interested. And yeah, if you have any questions, if you want to know anything about payment deals, details, ISO standards, just shout.
Thanks, Andrew. Speaker of the evening, we do have time for 1 or 2 questions. So, anyone have questions for Anna Willem and his amazing fridge, which we will be partaking in the next party?
Any challenges since you guys started Silverflow, or significant challenges that you faced?
Well, I get that question more often. That's so far it actually has went a bit quite easy. But I think what helps a lot is we have quite a senior team starting, so we know quite well what we do, what we want, and where we need to go. So of course you have a lot of small day-to-day challenges, but what really helps us up to spend and invest the time at the beginning to build the platform, think it through. We initially always said we want to have this scale and design it for that. So that helps a lot and of course we have some technical debt and things we need to solve. But so far it's quite okay. The biggest challenge for us is, of course, we don't really expect our competitors to just hide behind the curtain and they'll fight back. And typically that is more on legal things, contracts, certain shareholder or stakeholder structures where we sort of, if we go hands-on, it doesn't work. So we sort of try to find use cases where they can leverage us and then slowly sort of go into that company. And we overcome it in the beginning. For example, we focus a lot on payment service providers or other fintechs who just got their own acquiring licenses. Then they don't have any legacy acquiring technology, so that's a relatively easy entrance, but we'll get more and more of that. And of course, on the technical part, we will have challenges as well, but we have run so far we tested on 1080 per second. That's about a third of UK traffic on Cyber Monday. Of course, you can just spin up as much. You ask Jeff, and he spins as much up as you want. But yeah, you can really do a lot. A lot of these types of challenges, AWS takes care of it.
And which computing are you using? Because you mentioned native, but is it Lambda native, or is it like, are you using some other type of computing for it?
We're using the Lambda, so we're using mainly the AWS native products.
So fully native?
Yeah, yeah, and GitLab. We all write it in Node.js with TypeScript on top. Paul actually wrote a book on TypeScript, or well, yeah, part of the book, not all of it. And we say we use Go, but that's because we like the Go meetups. But we haven't done anything yet in Go, to be honest.
Okay. Thanks so much, Anthony.
Okay, so of course, first slide, the architect wants to start talking about architecture. I'm sorry, that's what we're going to have to talk about today. I'm going to go a little bit different from what the other speakers talking about, because this is not really about sort of business, sort of how things were built, but more the part that I played, and I have played quite a lot in my experience, doing architecture for companies, for software development. I've actually only been doing this for a little while, to be honest, but let's see a little bit about that. How does it? Yeah, there we go. So who am I? Honestly, name's Travis. I'm a principal solutions architect at Mobiquity, but I've only been that for about 3 months. I'm still trying to figure out what solutions architect means, I'll be quite honest with you. I spent 15 years working first at Amazon.com. May have heard of it. It's a small workshop. And then I moved to the Netherlands and started working for a small startup company, FinTech, doing a mobile app in the payment space. And yeah, from there I decided, yeah, consultancy sounded fun, but really it turned out that I actually just like working in payments, so this is why we're here. So I want to make one topic, one very bold statement tonight, and that's, you should be drawing more pictures. I'm trying to make sure that I keep my job. This is really what's important. And I don't mean pictures like this. This is not what I'm talking about. I'm actually talking more pictures like this. So in other parts of the world and other jobs, when we draw pictures, we draw with a little bit more rigor, right? When we talk about architecture, if you want to get a house blueprint, you know, you don't go to somebody and he starts, well, what about this on a whiteboard? You know, that's not really what he does. He's got, there's rules, regulations, there's ideas, there's rigor that gets added to it. And I would say that that's what software development needs. We need a little bit more rigor when it comes to the pictures that we want to draw. I would argue that we like this more. This is a lot more fun, but I think that we should bring a little bit more to it. So what motivates me to say that? Well, I would say, one, why should we draw more pictures? These sort of things give us the vision of what we want to build, right? So not just the conversations that we have, the epics, the stories that we build, you know, these functional documents, the pictures give us the best idea of where we want to go. That's going to give us the landmarks that we want to try to hit, how we're going to get there, and what kind of challenges we're going to face. So it's a really big part of that discussion, and we'll talk a bit more about that in a second. I also think that the pictures that we draw should bring clarification. This is one of my favorite comics. It says, for those who can't read it, oh, elephants, I thought you said we're going to cross the Alps with elegance. It's amazing. He doesn't understand, he missed the word, and this is what I'm trying to say. The pictures will actually describe to you better than trying to explain something just in a chat. So business terms show up all the time, right? In Payout, we talk about splits. You know, if you don't work with us on the day-to-day, splits is not the little thing you do in the gymnastics thing. It's an entirely different business term, right? Pictures can help us understand that better. Actually, Robert has some fantastic pictures of what a split looks like. I wish I had that at the moment, but these are the ideas, right? There's also industry terms that we talk about. Everyone's talking about data lake, right? But what does data lake actually mean to you? What does it mean for what you're using on your day-to-day? An architectural diagram is going to give you a better understanding of what does Payout think about data lake, right? Not just what's in you know, the articles online. And of course, it gives us a clarity on what kind of technologies we're going to plan on using. And that's actually, I think, for the developers in the room, this is the thing we like to really talk about. We want to really talk about the pieces of the puzzle that we're putting together, but it's only just a small part of it. I also think that the pictures that we draw are very important for education. Whenever we're bringing someone new on board and we want to talk about, this is the landscape, this is the map of the system that you're going to be working with. This is a very important part of that. If you're just reading something that's helpful, you know, wiki pages are always nice, but a picture says 1,000 words, and it can be a lot easier to even communicate what it is the system's doing. And then, of course, if you see something you don't know, that gives you an idea of, I should probably go look that up. So it's an idea for highlighting training areas as well. I hope a lot of this is very common and everyone's on board with this. If you have any other conversations, maybe we can bring it up otherwise. A question I get a lot, though, and one that I think is really interesting, is when should you be doing this? Right? When should architectural drawings happen? I think it was in a conversation not a month ago where it was like, oh, I'm more used to doing this at the end of the project, right? This is a documentation step, this architectural part. And I would say to turn it on its head, that should be something at the beginning. It should be as early as possible. As soon as you've got business requirements, as soon as the product owner or product manager or whatever you want to call it, you know, shows up, you start drawing the pictures right there. And that's going to give you an opportunity to translate what you just heard into something more tangible, a little bit easier to convey what it is that you think needs to be built. I worked in one of the projects, early days, we were working on what we were automating the payouts, and I spent the very first day listening to Robert and Martin talk about, okay, here's what we've got, here's what's coming, okay, let me throw up some quick pictures, and I spent a nice hour just like, all right, boom, I've got it, this is it. And as soon as he looked at it, he went, but you didn't think about refunds. And I went, oh, no. I destroyed everything. I had to go back and redo the whole thing. But he caught it then, you know? It was that moment that I had realized that this was the mistake. So a bug found here is much cheaper than a bug found in production. I also think that it's not just a part of a step in a long line of steps and you do it once and then you kind of throw it out. I think you do it often. Right? Every time you have a conversation, bring up the picture, bring up the architecture. And then if it needs to change, if something doesn't quite fit or a new problem was found or a challenge that makes the whole thing fall apart, you change it. They're not set in stone. The systems are built, the tools are there to make it change quickly, so do that. Anytime a plan change the architecture. Keep it up to date. Make sure that the map, I went right past my quote that I was so excited about putting on the first slide and forgot to talk about. If the map is old, then you can't change anything, right? Then it's hard to change the product. Now, it's not about when, but I think with rigor is actually the final comment that should be made there. When we're doing these plans, when we're making these maps, we should do it with an expectation that certain standards will be followed. That can be anything for whatever you want to do. I would advocate that you talk with your teams, you work with your architect, or you work with your group, your teams, and say, this is the standards we're going to follow, and you stick with them. You evolve them, obviously. You should change with as you understand, but you should hit those notes every time. And the reason for that is it'll be much easier to understand a new document. you show up to a new architecture thing you've never seen before, but it follows the same look and feel, has the same word usage and all that. The instant recognition of what you're looking at is really, really powerful. Okay, let's see. So this is the next little bit is about how I go about it, and hopefully I can motivate you to do something similar. Now, I'd love to say that I came up with this approach, but I did not. I stole it from this man. His name is Simon Brown. He wrote a couple books. He's got an entire website devoted to the model that we're going to talk about here, and he has his own website. I highly recommend. He's got YouTube videos out the wazoo. Just go and watch it. He's a really, really good speaker, much better than I am at trying to fully explain the model. But what is the model? And it's called C4. So we use the C4 model. I'll be quite honest with you, I have wanted to do this so much in my career, to use this very approach, and Simon was very much on board with it as well, so this was a great opportunity for Payaut and for me to really try this out. So what does C4 mean? The basics ideas are that you want to stick with high-level abstractions. You don't want to get too into the weeds of what's going on, and that's to prevent the information being too dense, anything like that, but also that it conveys as much as possible with as little as possible, right? So high abstractions are really the order of the day, but it's also about multiple diagrams. So what you see here, this is just an example, you can start with a very high-level context diagram. There's very little going on there, but based on where it is in the system, it's high level, it's talking about your core system and all of the actors around it, all of the software systems that are invoking your system, and you're calling out to it through REST or whatever it might be. And that gives you a very, very clear picture of your business. This is the thing this is what we're doing. This is all the things that it takes to make it happen. And then as you zoom in, so it's think of it like pinching and zooming into a map on Google Maps. You zoom into the area that you want to focus on, and in this case, we're going right into the heart of what's happening in this diagram, and you see the containers. And the containers represent your big technical areas of that component, of that software system. So like a database, or you've got two mobile apps, or you've got a web application, or something that's communicating with REST services, things like this. This captures, for me, this is actually the area where I spend the most time in, right? This is the moving parts of a problem that we're trying to solve. You can go deeper. They would zoom in even further into the components, so like this is an API, and it's looking at different REST controllers and things like that. That could be fine, I think, if you're getting into a really big system and you really wanted to detail everything out, but I think this is a little too much at this point. Maybe don't even worry about this at the beginning and let that come as a part of some other process. And then once you get into the code, that's just silly. Why anybody would hand write out diagrams of code, I would never do that. Let a system do that. Let some sort of post-processing of the code generate UML or whatever you want, or just leave that alone. Actually, he talks about it in his books that that's the area where very little ever gets done, because it changes so rapidly. Code just happens to change so often that there's very little benefit to that. It can, if you've got a massive hairy system. I don't know of any large hairy systems we've ever seen in the recent past, but it could be useful for understanding, say, maybe a monolith that you're trying to diagnose. So the abstractions we're talking about is, you'll see this over and over again, and this is talking about the rigor, right? When I say you always see the same things in my diagrams over and over again, some things they change, sometimes they evolve, but you should be able to point out the same kind of ideas, is that there's one major system we're working in, and then there's the containers that make up all the major business logic. Sometimes domain-driven design, you can think those are the domains of the areas that you're working in. They can also represent the applications, microservices, databases, things like that, and then of course components and code. Okay, I rushed through that. There's a lot better documentation online, YouTube videos if you want to go into and look into it more. I highly suggest that you do. But I think an example would be great. So what I'd like to do is now walk through a bit of the work that we did on the early days here at Payaut. So this is the top level. This is the context diagram for Payaut. First thing you see is the major systems involved. And because what Simon was explaining, Payaut takes in money from marketplaces, works with PSPs, and takes what was brought into our bank account and splits that out into other parties. So there's that split. Hey, there's the split terminology right there. What this diagram is trying to convey is the top level stuff, right? And from here, I can explain almost the entire workflow that happens, and it captures all that I really want to say. This is great for, you're sitting with a high level, C-level conversation in a big business. This is a great way. We're not talking too much about the technology, right? This isn't about Azure or DevOps or GitLab or anything like that. This is just the systems that are in play that need to make the business work, right? Some things I want to point out. Every box has a name. Usually that's true of any architectural diagram. But the thing it also contains is a description. So in the C4 model, it is very important that the architecture diagram stands on its own, right? So if you're looking at this and I don't explain anything else, you can generally get a feel of what's going on there. So the boxes should explain what it is that this system is responsible for. And that's it's just helpful for documentation. Also, every line should have an understanding of what's going on there. What's the relationship that's being described? I'm retrieving money from the buyer. Okay, so the marketplace is telling the payment service provider, the PSP, to take money from the provider and send it to our banking system, right? Very clear, it's high level, it's not very detailed, but it gives you a lot of information very quickly. Some small things, I always put in the box what it is we're talking about. At this level, it's not very useful because everything's a software system, and people are people, and they have people shapes, and they're not boxes. I mean, I've met some box-shaped people, but mostly they're just things with heads. Okay, so now let's zoom in. So let's do a little pinch of a zoom, and we'll go into the container diagram. So this one took a while. I'll be honest with you. So the first couple days I was able to get the high level context. But to get to this level, the team and we talked a lot with the existing engineers. We looked at the existing code. There were already some architectural diagrams there that helped influence this quite a bit. But what I really wanted to convey was the existing system as it sat in the Hertzner cloud as it was running, and to try to understand what were the moving parts. So now you can see there's something called client service that's accepting the requests from the market. They're putting stuff into an event queue. That event queue's got this strange loop going on. There's REST calls going to something called bookkeeping. All that's managed inside of a Cockroach DB. If anyone ever heard of Cockroach DB, that was my first time working with Cockroach. Very interesting technology, that. But you can still see everything still matches, right? So all the rigor's still there. You still see the boxes. I now show that the container, this is made of Java, Kotlin, and is a Spring Boot application. Highly recommended to run Java and Kotlin in the same code base, by the way. That's not confusing at all. We've got some JavaScript over there, and that kind of gives you a feel of kind of what you're working for. But what I really wanted to point out in this one was how much of the manual operation is involved in all of the work that happens. We have an administrative UI that does a lot of work, but this is pretty much how, there's so many arrows that are coming to this one guy. The one guy sitting in the back there. He's not allowed to fly because it's too dangerous. It's too much. So let's see if there's anything else I want to point out there. Well, this is the one I use a lot when explaining the system to new hires, right? So when we have somebody come on board, this is a great one to start with. This is the system as it exists. So we mapped the system. We went through the work of trying to understand it because I really didn't feel, and I think Simon and I agreed, that if we wanted to make the next couple steps, understanding what was there was very important, right? But once we understood what was there, now we want to plant that flag in the distance. Now we're talking about vision, right? We want to see where it is that we want to go. And Simon actually showed this picture already. We came up with this very high-level view, but kind of dense. It has some new ideas in it. Obviously, we needed to group things a little bit differently, but you still see the same rigor there, right? We've got the same kind of ideas. So if you've seen my previous architectural diagrams, you know what to look for, you know what's happening. We added some layers so that you can kind of group things in a little bit more rational way. We know that the core sits at the bottom. These are the main services that are providing a lot of the data that's getting fed into the data lake. We've got business applications that are doing things like connecting to PSPs, doing some reporting. And then of course you've got the layer up top where this is the sort of the zone for public interaction, right? So that's our gateway, our API gateway, and some dashboard. Now in this one I wanted to introduce, because we were also starting to talk about moving to GCP, I wanted to show what technologies were going to start being used here. And luckily GCP, Google provides these little handy icons for anything that you want to draw, and I like them. They're not so bad. They're totally cute right there. And I placed them where it was important, but it shows that we want to start using cloud functions. We've got some Kubernetes in there. We're currently using Kafka, but maybe some pub sub would be nice to put in that sort of place. And I didn't want to put too much technology in here, but it gives an idea of where we wanted to go. Obviously this is going to change. This is going to mutate and evolve. And as it does, we change the picture. Now one thing this is really nice, I use Draw.io for pretty much all of this, is it allows you to do some linking. And so this becomes a point where you can say, when we start a new project, we're going to do a new feature build, you can actually go to the area that's being affected and click on it. It'll take you to the next diagram, right? I'm touching the screen too much. And it's helpful for kind of like an index, right? This is a top level view of where you can kind of see, oh, okay, this is where I want to go and want to take a look. So what I'd like to do is walk you through one of the services that we just built, and we're actually in the process of testing in our sandbox environment right now, is the reporting service, and how that evolved. So do a little bit of pinch and zoom, and now we're looking at the reporting service. So it's obviously we're focusing on a particular area, so it's clear there's some stuff going on up top. This is the API gateway that we needed to implement. I added some new colors to show what's new and what's old. We wanted to, the first part of this whole project was that we needed to get data out of the database at Cockroach and into our data lake. We chose BigQuery to manage all of the large data queries. And Dataflow, which was a product from GCP, along with, I think it's Airflow and some other things, allows us to pull from every table here and shove it into the data lake. We want to make this publicly accessible, so we've got to have an API gateway. So we put an API gateway there, and then we have all this business logic we want to implement. And this was an opportunity for us to try cloud functions, right? So we've got some an existing monolith, but we don't really want to build this on top of the monolith, right? We're already kind of in GCP, we're flowing, we're feeling it, we're grooving. So let's try something new. So we tried the cloud functions, and it was tough. It was rough. I think, as Simon said, adding brand new technologies on something in a rush is difficult. But one of the things that was really handy about this picture is even when we were in the middle of trying to decide what to do, the engineers are working on it, we caught that things weren't going exactly as we planned. Right? There was a discussion I think Simon had, and the team came together and we were like, wait a second, we're hearing one thing, but the picture says another. What's true? What's real about this thing? And by having a map of what we had planned to do, it was much easier to come back and go, but we said this. Is this what we're still doing? It was fantastic. The team came together. We decided, yeah, we're going to really crunch on this cloud functions thing. And yeah, I think it works pretty well right now. We've added the cloud functions to GitLab pipelines. So now when you go and make a change, it immediately pushes up to GCP. And the API gateway forwards all of its traffic through these cloud functions to do things like request the database to generate files that it puts onto cloud store or cloud file store. And then if you want to download it, it hits the database, says, hey, where's that at? And pulls it out of the file store. It's a pretty, yeah, it was a pretty smooth operation once we kind of got going. I think once we understood the technology a lot better and everything started kind of gelling, it went pretty well. Now, one of the things I wanted to point out is the beauty of this is we could decide not to build something, right? So I sit there on the very first day and said, okay, here's what I think. Boom, what do you guys think? And the teams were wrestling over kind of what makes sense now and what should go away. And we realized, you know, MVP, like get this thing out the door, we really don't need these two things. The other bits and pieces we do need, but we can totally drop two of these bits and bobs. And that's great. Not writing code is faster than writing code, so we're already better off than we were when we started. So this is so good. Yeah. So I'm pretty happy about that. And that's what I mean by early and often. right? So often we did this early in the process, and then while we were having discussions about building, we changed the diagram. Okay. Yeah, well, what about that whole map quote that I skipped over and didn't talk about because I got too excited? One of the projects we were working on, and I hinted on it a little bit, was the payout scheduling. And this one didn't go, this was one of those moments where really what I wanted to build, or what I had hoped we would build, and what we went for, two almost totally different things. The shape stayed the same, but the technologies changed dramatically. So in the early days, this picture was almost all GCP, right? It was cloud functions, it was the same kind of idea. It works so well in reporting, why wouldn't it work in this one, right? But when I sat down with the team, and it was one of the best moments I think I had as an architect, sitting with the team and working through what are the step-by-step moments, what are we going to build? What is the thing we're going to go through? And very quickly, we got into it and realized, no, this doesn't make any sense. This is really not going to work. We need to, if we're going to do this quickly, if we're going to get it out in time, because we've got Convius coming, we've got a deadline, we've got to hit this, adding this new technology is really going to slow us down. And I did have to swallow a little bit of pride, I'll be honest with you. I was like, no, team knows better than I do. I'm not going to argue with them. We switched it up. We went with, we put this back on the monolith. We went with our standard Java application. These are now Spring REST controllers instead of cloud functions. The basic shape stayed the same, right? We still have these parts that need to be there, right? We still need to do most of this work, but now it's a completely different shape. So the beauty of this kind of approach, and I really reflected on this later, is that I went in and changed it, right? After we had the conversation, after the team came back together, I realized, yeah, this approach works really well, even if we decide to completely uproot everything that we just had started with and go with something different, it still makes sense. And yeah, I used the picture on when we write our stories, we put them into sprints, I actually zoom into the area that it's working on, and that way you always come back to the original picture. Yeah, I think one of the major changes was this scheduler was a cloud scheduler, and I think it was Fernando was talking to me like, why do we have a cloud scheduler here? And I was sitting there thinking, oh yeah, because we completely changed everything about what we were doing. This picture doesn't make sense anymore, and we quickly changed it. So there were great moments during this particular project that I think really solidified in my head that this kind of approach can be super useful for communicating. Okay, I think, yeah, that's it. So I'll end with just saying, draw more pictures. It's going to be, it's going to save you a lot of time. Do it early, often, and with rigor, and you'll be happier for it. Thank you very much.
Okay.
We got time for questions?
Do we have any questions for our final speaker of the evening?
Do you have a business card?
You can't see Liv is saying. Stop it.
Yeah.
As ex-Amazonians, I wonder about the narrative writing. How does it fit with drawing more pictures?
So
is it also part of the process, or
where I was
separate?
in the application, or where I was in the grand scheme of Amazon, I didn't get to draw a lot of pictures. I was a software developer, kind of taking pictures handed to me, but it very much was a part of the conversation. Now, what we saw much more often were more sequence diagrams. If you're familiar with the idea of sequence diagrams of systems like working through time, like what everything is being worked on during a certain operation, that was much more what I saw. Had I had some drawings of like what the actual space was, the map of the world that I was working on, I think I would have spent much less time trying to understand things. So we did not have great drawings in the area that I was. And that's partly why I started digging into this kind of approach, because I did feel that there was new hires coming into our world spent an enormous amount of time trying to just get caught up. You know, you're talking 6 months before somebody is really able to do anything. And a lot of people keep in their own notation, their own kind of like vision of the thing. Architects were kind of hard to come by. They spent more time in AWS, so I worked in the catalog, and AWS had their guys. But I think, yeah, this kind of approach would have really helped me, being even a junior engineer at Amazon. Anyone else?
Final question of the evening.
Cool.
No pressure. Better be a good one.
All right.
think you've
Let's do it.
out-questioned us,
Yeah, we're
Travis.
done.
We have no more questions.
Now to the karaoke.
It was amazing. Let's go. Let's go. Thank you so much.